Okay, it's recording, so you can start.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It is April 29th, 2024. This is the GBOS LUC joint special meeting. Thanks everyone for coming this evening or attending online. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its committees and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Anchorage Code 1.25 public meeting. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meetings Standards of Conduct. I call this meeting to order at 7:01. I'm Brianna Sullivan, GBOS co-chair and fire department supervisor. I'll read the land acknowledgement next. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors acknowledges the indigenous peoples of Alaska whose land we reside on. The community of Girdwood, situated between the areas known to be Dena'ina and Aluptic homeland, respects the people who were stewards of this land for generations. We commit to the continued stewardship of this land and are grateful to be a part of a wider community that seeks to maintain a sustainable use of Girdwood Valley for present and future people. I'll start with roll call for GBOS in the room. On the left,
Jennifer Wingard, GBOS co-chair and IAC.
Brian Burnett, newly seated.
and online GBOS.
Guy Wade, Parks and Rec, Cemetery.
Thank you, Guy. Back in the room.
Mike Edgington, Housing and Economic Development Supervisor.
Okay, thank you. That is the attendees from GBOS this evening, and then the Land Use Committee.
Kevin McDermott, Land Use Chair.
Lisa Miles, Land Use Committee. Is there anyone online from Land Use? Okay, hearing none. We have the following attendees from GBOS and Land Use. Are there any disclosures this evening?
Yes. I have a very obvious private disclosure. I'm chair of the group that's petitioning for this.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And you may be recused from this completely. Thank you for disclosing. Any other disclosures? Okay, we'll move right along. I didn't entertain a motion to adjourn the agenda.
I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I'd ask for assent on this if there are no oppositions. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. To help discussion stay productive, please direct your comment to the board rather than other members of the public and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion. Please be respectful of everyone's opinions. Night number one on the agenda is introduction and overview. So, online introduction may begin.
I think that's us, right? You're just diving right into the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I want to introduce the Huddle team who's online tonight. I'm Holly Spoth-Torres, the principal of Huddle, and we're really excited to present this to you tonight. And then we'll go to Bree next.
Hi, I'm Bree Kieser. I'm a landscape architect at Huddle.
Go ahead, Peyton.
Hi, I'm Peyton. I'm a landscape designer at Huddle.
Okay, thank you. So there's probably many of you who have heard us give this presentation before on the draft of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. What we're going to do tonight is pretty similar to how we've presented in the past, but we're going to go into a little bit more depth. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay. So the way that we do this is I'll give an overview and then Bree and Peyton will get into the details. Okay. What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to do what I always do when I talk about the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. I'm going to talk about what it is, why we're doing it. I'm going to do kind of an overarching description of what's in the plan and how it's organized. I'm gonna, at a high level, go over the comments that we received. But mostly I'm gonna talk about how they're organized and how you all can get into the comments and start digging into them in more detail. Because of a lot of what we're going to present tonight is based on those comments. And then what Bree will do is Bree will talk about the details of the April 2024 draft of the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. So she's going to talk about the draft as it stands today. And then after she does that, she's going to go into details of how the plan changed from the draft, the public review draft, which is the draft you all submitted comments on, which we received hundreds of comments on. Okay, so we decided to kind of like separate those discussions so we can really focus on what the draft looks like today. And then we'll tell you how it changed. When we were practicing and going through it, we thought it was a little bit confusing to bop back and forth between the public review draft and then the April 2024 draft. So we're going to kind of separate those discussions. And then when we get to the end, then we'll take discussion, comments, we'll answer any questions that you have about what you're seeing, all those sorts of things. So that's how we're planning this to unfold tonight. Thumbs up?
Sounds good. Thank you, Holly.
Okay. And it looks like Daniel just joined too. Daniel has been a member of the project team. You want to wave Daniel? He's a member of the planning department.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Sorry, audio issues.
Cool. Okay. So here we go. As you all know, Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. I think I'll start by sharing, no. I'm going to start by sharing the overview. The Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, as you all know, is your guiding document for Girdwood. It contains visions, goals, policies, and an implementation strategy that's all focused around land use, okay? It sets your priorities for the next 20 years. I'll talk a little bit more detail about the public involvement that we've done over the past many years, but there has been extensive public participation involving the development of this plan, including the Imagine Girdwood Committee, the Girdwood community, organizations, your local officials at times, and other partner organizations. So this plan is an update to the 1995 Girdwood Area Plan. So just park that in your memory. The old plan we called the Girdwood Area Plan. This plan we're calling the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan because it really is the overarching policy and land use plan for your valley. The timeline horizon for the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan is about 20 years. And again, it's going to include a land use plan map, vision, goals, and policies, and an implementation strategy. This plan will be used by lots of regulatory bodies, advisory bodies, funders, when they're making decisions about how to manage growth, how to manage development, where to allocate funding, how to prioritize community policies, and what you're going to do next. So this plan is going to be used by everyone. Okay, so what the land use plan map does, it guides how land use decisions can proceed by identifying parcels that are suitable for a overarching land use categories, right? Like housing, commercial, industrial. And then it also works to preserve other things like outdoor recreation, open space, historical values, and other aesthetic and scenery values. So the goal is to promote efficient land use that's aligned with your priorities, and helps you implement the needs for housing, transportation, utilities, and other infrastructure that's going to support you. Okay. There are 4 chapters in the plan. The first chapter is the introduction. It includes the vision, goals, and policies. It provides an overview of the comprehensive plan. It summarizes the public process, and it details the vision, goals, and policies. The second chapter is more background and analysis. It provides detailed information about the valley, the location, the environment, the existing land use, the planning context. So it really analyzes existing plans that are out there now. It gets into some analysis about housing and transportation and future population projections. There's not a lot of decisions made in chapter 2, but what is important about chapter 2 is it sets the context and outlays the background. It outlines the background and analysis that we used to make decisions in chapters 3 and chapters 4. Okay. Chapter 3 is your land use plan. There's a land use plan map that implements your vision, goals, and policies. And it utilizes chapter 2, the existing conditions analysis. And then chapter 3, in addition to the land use plan maps, is it really starts to outline the future land use categories and how the land use plan map, basically it defines the land use plan map in detail by defining the land use categories. And then chapter 4 is the implementation plan. And when you review chapter 4, you'll see that it tightly aligns with your vision, goals, and policies. Okay, so I'm going to start there because there's a lot of text here, but in chapter 1, are your vision, goals, and policies. And then in chapter 4, you'll see that the implementation actions align with your vision, goals, and policies. I'm going to talk about the vision, goals, and policies just a little bit more in detail because although this plan is an update to the 1995 plan, what we really learned through the process is like not a lot changed about your values. Girdwood values its small town atmosphere. You're a community who wants equitable and affordable access to services, facilities, and housing that maintain and enhance your quality of life. Girdwood is a community that's active outdoors. And Girdwood's natural environment is the basis and the foundation for your identity and your economy. So the things that do change as time goes on is how you work to implement those values and the kind of economic and social issues that you're facing. So the goals and the policies are organized into 4 areas based on your priorities and the issues you're facing now, which include economic development, housing, recreation and open space, and transportation. So in chapter 1, your vision, goals, and policies are organized into those 4 topic areas: economic development, housing, recreation, and open space. And then again, in chapter 4, your implementation section, they're also organized that way. Everything that we've done in this plan is to work to implement your vision, goals, and policies. So that's our constant checkpoint for developing this plan. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I just want to talk about, it's underneath my, there we go. Okay. I want to talk about this comment response form a little bit, and Bree's gonna go over a little bit later the major themes from the comments that directly led to plan changes. But what I want to do here is actually, before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the schedule. Hold on. Okay, just to remind you, and the funniest thing was, do you see what it says? A diagram of a diagram. A description automatically generated with medium confidence. Anyway, that was funny to me, but I know. I want to remind you what has been accomplished to date. I've talked a little bit about this, but in 2019 is when we started this process with the community survey. Every Girdwood landowner was mailed a survey. In addition, there were intercept surveys completed at the post office and other public places in town. There were flyers posted all around town to capture both people who were property owners in Girdwood and people who lived in Girdwood but maybe weren't property owners. So that was the initial start of talking about what issues are you facing and the initial start of developing a draft vision, goals, and policy. So after we finished the survey, we had the first open house in April of 2019, and that was kind of our first public meeting to do a check on what we heard, the results of the community survey, and if we were heading in the right direction with the vision and goals. After that open house, there were a lot of people. That was the first one. There were about over 100 people there. Then the Imagine Girdwood committee started working on the draft vision, goals, and policies. And they spent about, that's when, you know, COVID happened at that point. There was some fundraising that needed to happen. So they spent about 12 months drafting the vision, goals, and policies. And from that, there was another public meeting where the community provided tons of comments on those vision, goals, and policies. And then in March of 2021, the committee officially adopted those as a draft vision, goals, and policies, because then the planning team took those and started moving toward the technical planning work from there in order to figure out how to implement those. And what that meant is we started the existing conditions, land suitability, and housing demand analysis. And that's where Ag Newbeck completed economic, workforce, population, demographics, that sort of technical analysis. And then Bree dove into a land suitability analysis, and she took a series of environmental conditions and she overlaid them on your land to figure out what land is suitable for potential future development. And that allows us to understand in the future if there's enough land to implement your vision, goals, and policies. Is there enough? Is there too much? Are there utilities there? So that sort of thing. That was the existing conditions, land suitability, and housing demand. We finished that in 2022. From there, we started diving into the plan development and approval process, and this has been a long phase. We developed draft land use plan maps, and we had a public workshop focused on land use plan maps. We developed 2 land use plan scenarios from that workshop that went to another public meeting. And then we took everything we learned from that public meeting and we started developing the plan that included the narrative of everything you've seen to date, including the existing conditions, the draft vision, goals, and policies. And then we developed the narrative and the land use categories based on everything we learned from the public meeting around land use planning. Okay, we're still in the plan. Oops. Oh, come on. We're still in the plan development and approval process. And from there, we released a public review draft that was open. Was that at the end of February that we did that? Yeah, that was the end of February. The public review draft was available for public comment for 30 days. We collected over 400 comments. And then between March 31st and April 24th, we took all those comments, we responded to all of them, and then we released what we're calling the April 2024 Girdwood Comprehensive Plan draft. So tonight we're going to tell you what that is, as you know, and we're going to talk about all the changes between the public review draft and the April 2024 draft. So we're spending a lot of time here, but that's okay because it's a ton of work. Okay. I want to talk about the comments because I think it's important for you to understand how to use this document. It's not your, if you're going to continue to review the draft and understand the changes, this document is going to be helpful to you. If you want to know how your specific comments have been addressed, this document is going to be helpful to you. Okay. Everything here is available on the Imagine Girdwood website, and I'll pull that up in a second. But this is 118 pages. The first 57 pages are what we're calling a comment response summary. So this is a summary of all the public comments we received. And you'll see that you can't see any names associated with these comments. They're organized into subject, what the comment was. There's a comment code. There's our response to that comment. And then there is, was there a change to the plan or not based on this comment? Okay. So how this ties to the second half of the document on page 58 is if you are, I think you're online tonight too, but if you are Julie Jonas and you want to know how we dealt with one of your specific comments, you would use your find or search tools in whatever program you use. Find your name and look, there's Julie. And then you see your original comment and you see how it's categorized here, this FB3 in the land use category. So then you would go back to the beginning of the document, or you could search FB3 and see how this is the comment code here. And you could see what the comment was, how we dealt with it, and if there was a change to the plan or not. So once you dig into it, it's really easy to use. It was important for us to track all your individual comments so you know how we dealt with them. But it was also important for us to categorize them in a way that makes sense. And so you could see how they combine together in a way that actually implemented or changed the plan. Excuse me, not implemented, but changed or adjusted or edited the plan. So it'll be important for you if you're tracking plan changes from the public review draft to the April 2024 draft to see where there was all these yeses here are important. Yes, 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 yes. That says that there's a change. All the no's, there's no change. Okay. Should we move on, Bree, or should maybe I'll stop for questions about process and overall organization first. How about if I stop there first and then we'll get into the details next? Are there any questions so far?
We have one in the room, Holly, but briefly, you did say you'd go to the Imagine Girdwood website really quick just to show where it was.
Yep.
And then we have one question from the audience.
You said in your presentation that Bree did the land suitability analysis. Was that in the context of steep slopes, avalanche slopes and that sort of thing? Because, you know, if you did it that way, all last resort would be steep slopes and unsuitable for any kind of development. And yet
Yeah.
there,
Yeah, there's a difference between outdoor recreation and actual infrastructure. And so if
Agreed.
I'm, and Bree, you, yeah, she took that into account. I'll let her use her own words if she wants to, but she took that into account when she was doing the analysis.
Yes.
There's,
Go ahead.
there's a certain amount of risk that people take on when they want to recreate in the outdoors with undeveloped infrastructure, and they can do that in any sort of terrain that they want to. But when we're thinking about developing infrastructure, that's a little different. But go ahead, Bree.
I was just going to say, if you want to look at the details of that in the section 2 portion, there is a table that outlines all the criteria we used called environmental constraints criteria. And in each of the 3 categories, so there was generally suitable land, marginally suitable, and then unsuitable. Slope is used for all of those categories. Marginal was between 15 and 35%. Less steep than that was generally suitable, and steeper was generally unsuitable. But like Holly said, if you have very steep slopes, that's appropriate for certain types of recreation, trails, other uses. It's really to help hone in on where should a large amount of housing go, or where should a public facility go. So kind of that big picture look. And when someone gets more site specific, they can look at details further.
thank you.
So the other thing you'll notice if you want to dig, well, I'll talk about the website here first. So this is the homepage of imaginegirdwood.org. You can get to the revised draft in 2 different places. You can click on this big orange band here. You can also click the menu over here. It'll lead you to this page, which includes this is important. The revised draft, April 2024. It includes the 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it includes appendices, which include Girdwood Community Surveys, the Girdwood Community Survey results, economic and housing analysis draft, and then the comment responses from the public review draft. The details about all the criteria that Bree was talking about the existing conditions analysis are found in section 2.
Holly,
Yep.
while you're there, could you also show the link to the video from last week's more brief presentation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Right below this is another video of us talking through this. We are going into more detail tonight. So if this gets recorded and you want a refresher, you might want to watch this one instead. I don't know if Margaret makes those available or not. Okay, I guess the last thing I'll say about this page is please don't confuse. There's 2 links here. This is the revised April 2024 draft here. You can also access the information from the public review draft that was published on February 28th, and you can do that here. So that information is not gone. It looks very similar. That's why I say be careful, look at dates. But so if you want to track the public review draft and what's changed now, those 2 things are still available to you. Okay. Bree, do you think you're ready? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and Bree's going to start digging in.
I'll share my screen. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to focus on section 3. And like Holly said, this is the land use plan section. It has your proposed land use plan map, and I'll probably spend most of my time there. But first, I'm going to start with the land use categories. So the 1995 plan had 14 different land use categories. And part of our process was to start there, looking at how they were defined, looking at your visions and goals, and determining whether they should remain, they should be consolidated, or completely removed. So if you want to look at how we thought through that process, there's a table with the previous definitions. There's a table of how those categories changed moving forward. And then there's the table of the proposed land use categories and those definitions. So I'm going to focus there. We have 9 proposed categories. There are 2 specific to residential, a mixed use category, industrial, public lands and institutions, park, commercial recreation, commercial recreation reserve, and then open space. For the 2 residential focused categories, there's what we're calling low density residential and mixed density residential. And as you read through the definition, you'll see that the kind of low versus mixed density is referring to the impact a development has on a site. So low is intended to be a smaller footprint, traditionally associated with single unit developments, whereas mixed density would have a broader category of housing types up to multi-family style development. And in both categories, there is the recommendation to use form-based code standards for your residential districts as you develop your zoning code. So like Holly said, this comprehensive plan sets a really kind of broad overview of where you take your different policies, such as your zoning code. So the recommendation is what's called form-based, where you are regulating your residential areas by height, by the footprint they impact the site, potentially preserving natural vegetation, by setbacks. And that way, there creates opportunity for potentially more units on a site or smaller lots. And this is all tied to several of your housing policies that talked about creating more opportunities for housing throughout Girdwood. We also, I'm going to scroll down past the maps, I'll come back to them, but we've added these diagrams for the 2 residential zones to show just graphically what the vision is and not necessarily set specific dimensional standards. But for the low density residential district, we show a few different housing type examples, such as a small lot single unit home with an ADU, a duplex, and then maybe a triplex home in a style of what would be traditionally seen as a kind of like a single unit home. And the idea is to show that you could create design standards that create a character that you're looking for within certain zones in the community, whereas the mixed density might allow a wider range of housing types, larger multifamily units, and even single unit homes. So that's kind of a broad overview of the 2 residential categories. Next is mixed use, and this kind of serves as what was previously defined as commercial and commercial recreation. A lot of the goals and policies and a lot of the public feedback that we heard throughout the process is that you guys want more flexibility in your land use. You want to be able to have residential in areas with commercial uses, creating more walkable communities. So that's really the purpose of this mixed use, creating opportunities for more residential within commercial areas, and also creating more commercial opportunities throughout the valley. And I'll speak to that when we go to the maps. Industrial is a consolidation of what was previously industrial and airport. And really the intent there is to just keep it a very broad category and allow for traditional, typical industrial uses such as light manufacturing, processing, service, storage, wholesale type uses. But later in the narrative, we do speak to that. If it's within the airport area, it does need to meet kind of standards associated with the aviation use there. Public lands and institutions. Very similar to the previous, the 1995 category really meant for civic centers, libraries, government buildings, and those types of uses. Park is designated on existing dedicated parkland, whereas open space is areas that are undeveloped but may not necessarily be dedicated as parkland. And then the other two categories, commercial recreation, would be for areas used for recreation in a commercial sense. So Alyeska is obviously a great example. That's one of the areas designated as commercial recreation. And then commercial recreation reserve is for a potential future use such as that. But, and I think when I go to the map, it will make more sense, but it is not an active land use category. If someone were to develop that area, they would have to do a map amendment and change the land use plan map to an active category, whether that's commercial recreation or something else. So those are the 9 categories. And the next, I'm going to speak to the map overall, and I'm going to use the 1995 plan for comparison so you can see some of the larger themes happening in the update. So there's 2 maps. There's the zoomed out map that shows the larger extent of the valley, and then there's the zoomed in that just shows slightly north of the airport, so about there. We'll start with the zoomed out map. And this, the extents were based on matching the 1995 plan, which I'm going to pull up here as well. All right. Sorry, I'll just take me a second. Okay. So looking at this kind of larger picture view, some of the biggest changes that have happened in the update is more open space. In the 1995 plan, there was a designation of development reserve along Crow Creek Road, north of northwest of the airport. That area is now open space along with the central area in the valley, which was previously recreation reserve and resort. So a lot more open space to the north, and then in the southeast as well. That area was designated development reserve, commercial recreation here, and then here as well. And those areas are also now open space. And I think just one thing I want to say about, Holly touched on how the 1995 plan and your plan now have a lot of the bigger picture visions that are very similar, but the conditions were different at the time. That there was a larger population growth expectation. In our the population analysis that Agnew Beck did does not see that happening over the next 20 years. Excuse me. And then at the time, there was also a vision for a lot of recreation development, including an expanded resort and the potential for golf course areas in the south. So just those a couple changes have led to large map changes. This area here, like I said, was identified as potential resort expansion. When we did the draft version of the plan, we removed that and made that open space. But during the last public set of comments, we did receive feedback that there is potentially still interest in expanding commercial recreation to this area. So that's why we've added the commercial recreation reserve category and shown that in this version of the map. And then just graphically, we did show the trail network from the Girdwood Trails plan on this map because tying into existing trails is an important policy and goal within your land use plan. So we just wanted to make sure it was graphically represented. And this map also shows the proposed road network. Whereas
do you need a minute?
I think so. Sorry.
She was just gonna forge on, but take a minute. It's okay. You can take more.
I probably should have grabbed like a cough drop or something. So I think actually that's pretty much what I wanted to touch on in this zoomed out version. So next
Yes.
I'll scroll to the
Yeah,
zoomed
so
in version.
in summary, that was just in summary, that's the difference between the 1995 plan and the current plan and how land use designation, future land use designations have changed between the two. And that was on the scaled out version. Okay, now moving to the scaled in version.
Yeah, so when you look closer within the valley, so this is just a little bit north of the airport. I think one of the biggest obvious changes is the amount of yellow shown on this map versus this map. In the update, yellow is associated with low density residential. In 1995, it was associated with single family residential. And we, based on your, again, policies and goals, and then just feedback throughout the process, there's interest in creating more opportunities for more housing. So a lot of this area on the west side of the valley is now identified as mixed density residential, along with some mixed use pockets. So that's kind of one of the biggest obvious graphic changes. Also, like I said in the zoomed out map, these areas that were previously commercial recreation are now open space. And we've also added kind of a identifier said potential future dedicated parkland. And that's because during the comment process, we received really specific comments of interest in park uses in these areas. And one of the recommendations of the plan is to develop a park and open space plan. So this is just a recommendation based on the comments, and whether or not that becomes parkland would be determined in a park and open space plan. Let me see here. What else I just wanted to quickly touch on in the zoomed in. Again, north of the airport is now identified as open space. And then something I just wanted to say about expanding the opportunity for mixed use, that's really based on the goal of creating walkable neighborhoods. By having opportunity for something like a small shop or coffee shop or something along those lines, these areas that will have higher density residential, it creates opportunities for people living there to walk to nearby commercial uses. Although I know there's a lot of interest in maintaining a strong commercial core. This just expands that potential for walkability. I think those are kind of some of the big picture things I just wanted to touch on the differences in the two maps. Holly, is there anything else before? Because I think next I was just going to go over how we incorporated comments.
No.
Okay.
Does anyone have I guess let's stop and see if there's any questions before we talk about how we incorporated comments to get where we are today between the public review draft and this draft. But I guess, does anybody have any comments on how this has changed from the 1995 plan and how the decisions were made? We might start getting mixed up in comments and changes, but I guess any questions today to this point?
The boards. We, really quick, I failed to mention Ryan Hutchins Kabibi joined at 7:08 for the record. We do have a question in the room. I don't see any questions from the board, so we'll go in the room first and then online.
It'd be the only one asking questions. Then if you went with the commercial recreation reserve designation for all the lands up valley, does that mean then that cat skiing and the hut that has existing uses up there are not commercial recreation?
No, they are.
They're not mentioned, the cat skiing is mentioned as a usage in the plan, but huts The hut usage is not.
Um,
Do,
Go ahead, Bree.
we did, actually that came up as a comment. So, because that area really would function as open space until it's changed to something else, there is some language in the open space section that uses such as public use cabins, or like you said, the cabin that's there would still be allowed in open space.
I'm confused. Is it open space or commercial recreation reserve?
It would function as open space until it was changed to commercial recreation reserve. Do you want to describe the active versus inactive land use category again, Bree?
I thought this plan changed it to commercial recreation reserve from open space.
Yeah, so I'll just say it one more time. It identifies it as commercial recreation reserve. So if in the future there is economic demand for infrastructure more associated with resort use, like actual infrastructure development that's more intense than a public use cabin or a downhill ski area, more intense than a public use cabin or like heliskiing or something like that, then at that point you would go through a land use plan map change. So what this effectively does is it identifies that the community at this point says that in the future, if that comes up, yeah, that would be okay. But if
I guess my point is that line is not well defined in the plan.
I think I have a good example in that,
yeah,
the 1995 plan also had reserve categories. For example, this resort reserve and the development reserve. So all this area down here, all this area up here, those all function as open space. That's the use that's permitted. The reserve category doesn't allow for housing there currently, but if based on the 1995 plan, if someone proposed housing there, they could go through a map amendment and change it. And they would have the support of the map to say kind of why they can change that. Does that help answer that question?
the point is that there's an additional step required for development of that kind.
Well, I don't understand if somebody wanted to upgrade, supposing the existing owner wanted to upgrade the hut.
That is consistent with open space. So that would be an allowed use in the open space category. So that'd be fine.
Okay, we'll move on to Bree's, anything else Bree said, and then we have a question online as well. So
yeah,
Bree, anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna touch on some of the, so kind of what I already talked about was just big picture, what are the changes from your current land use plan? Now I just want to talk about big picture, what are the changes from the last draft version you saw and the current version you're seeing today? So I'm going to speak to a couple of the other sections, but I'm just going to keep section 3 up on my screen. In section 1, we clarified that this is the comprehensive plan for Girdwood. It's not, the Anchorage comprehensive plan doesn't show Girdwood as a part of it. This is your comprehensive plan. In section 2, we did add a few additional plans to the background section. And actually, I might just jump to that table. And this is that environmental constraints criteria table I was talking about earlier. But within this section, we talk about plans that informed the current land use plan, and we added a couple based on the comments, which include the Coastal Wetland Natural and Historic Interpretive Plan from 1981, the Archaeological Survey of 2021, the recommendations based on that for historic preservation of 2021, and then the Alyeska Area Master Plan. And really, after reviewing these, a lot of them were consistent with the land use plan, although we did add a section that recommends considering a historic district based on this plan. In this same section, we added definitions for housing that is affordable, income restricted, affordable housing, and attainable housing. And then In section 3, we did some tweaks to some of the land use definitions based on the feedback. We added that commercial recreation reserve area. And in terms of the actual changes to the map itself, the area that had been called the Mitten, so that was just north of the Girdwood Airport, which was resort in 1995, is now open space. And we had previously identified some opportunities for housing southwest of this subdivision, and that area is now open space as well. Something I actually forgot to touch on generally from the 1995 plan and this plan is we did bring forward some of the new kind of road network proposals from that plan. So this connection here on the west side, the connection across the valley between Crow Creek and Arlberg, and then the connection down here in the southeast. Some of the biggest changes from 1995 and based on the comments is that this road is intended to be studied as a potential emergency access road with an arrow here indicating that additional study needs to be done for how this ties back into the core of the town. The old plan had it coming through some parcels up here and connecting to the Alyeska Highway, and we received concerns about that layout. Up here, this connection has been brought further south, implying that ideally this connection would have the least conflict with existing and proposed trails. Ultimately, the layout will have to be based on a lot of different factors, but at least this plan kind of sets a precedent for that. And that's all based on feedback we received throughout the process. Just some other kind of changes to the narrative within the Section 3. 1995 plan showed a road coming through here and connecting to Rouen. And we're not showing that on this plan, but in the narrative, we do describe the potential to study that connection as part of the park and open space plan. Since this is parkland and previously it was a different use, that road connection may or may not make sense. And that was an update based on the comments. Additionally, in section 3, so these were added based on comments, these diagrams. And then if you scroll to the bottom, we have a couple new sections. We have a new section that describes the Girdwood Airport and potential appropriate uses there. We have this section called How Land Use Categories Relate to Zoning Districts with a table of existing zoning, the 2024 land use categories, and what future zoning may look like based on these definitions. And then also a description of how this plan is a living document that can change over time through an amendment process. And then in section 4, a lot of the content stayed the same. I would think a lot of the changes we received were more about like adding certain partners or changing the language slightly. One big change was removing a recommendation to create a permit process for the removal of trees. There were concerns about that being an issue when someone has to remove a tree for safety or fire issues. So that recommendation was removed. And I think with that, those are just kind of big picture changes from the last draft you would have seen.
We had 2 questions, 3. I'll check if there's still questions. So Brett online, do you still have a question?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it was cleared up, Brett Wilbanks. GHEC, we were looking at that at a parcel that you slightly described as abutting a green color that wasn't in the key in the index. So it's that middle shade of green. It's south of the PLI blue space, and it abuts Glacier Creek, just south of the library there. I was kind of noting as you described the exit out of that section. Yeah, correct. That section, that green, I was going to ask what that shade of green meant. It wasn't open space, but it wasn't dedicated park space. So was that, that was one of my questions.
Yes, good question.
Okay.
So this hatching green here is is intended to match this one in the legend and its potential future dedicated parkland. So
Okay.
it's not currently parkland, but could be based on kind of future planning.
Okay, thank you, because it led into a question that I had asked earlier in a public meeting where your mouse was just in the red parcel, just to the kind of to the north, I guess you could say. Yeah, right. Yeah, right in that area along Glacier Creek. We had been considering use of that land under a parks use as well, potentially for RV development. So that land request has been in process, and I wanted to reaffirm that the coding here that you've described on your map as being red or mixed use would not preclude the concept that our community has been exploring about developing that into a, say, a parks and recreation developed use facility, such as an RV park or something like that. And so what is your interpretation of that use in that described area where the mouse is, according to your map?
Yeah, I can have Holly, you can chime in too if you want, but typically park uses, this plan isn't intended to define every use allowed in every district, but typically park uses are allowed in all districts, typically. They're not usually restricted. So if it's mixed use, something that's traditionally a park use would be allowed.
Thank you for that. Just wanted to clarify that we, we're capturing what our community was driving towards within this descriptive land use map. So thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Do we have another question in the room?
Thanks. Tim Charnock. I have a question on the Girdwood area trails plan recently approved. Would there be a value to include that as a reference plan in this, or why was that not referenced in the plan?
I believe that it is, right, Bree?
Yeah, all the trails shown here are from that plan. So Girdwood Trails plan, proposed trails, and then the existing trails as well.
Okay, thanks. And then a follow-up on Dave's comment on the commercial recreation reserve area. If we wanted to rebuild the cabin, make a second cabin, do some summer trails in that area, is that all compatible with the current designation of commercial recreation reserve?
Yes, and the intent would be that's compatible with open space too. So outside of that hatched area as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, Weston, if you could come closer to the mic if you have questions. We have another question in the room.
I just wanted to see if the there was still that part that had the evacuation plan in there. And I wanted to reiterate that we have evacuation plans, and evacuations are very dynamic. We don't need to be paying a contractor to do evacuation plans for us. Evacuation plans are included in the community wildfire protection plan. Additionally, there's tsunami evacuations, and anyone has any questions about the evacuation plans, I can assist you with telling you what they are. And then additionally, I wrote the first evacuation plan for Anchorage, so it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about. So it would be, if you want to have a second access road, I think that's wonderful, but call it a second access road study. Don't call it an evacuation plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think those are the comments right now.
So I think from here, if there's no questions or comments or discussion about anything else, we need to talk about what you do next. Are we ready to do that? Okay.
Thumbs up.
So. Yes, I'm sorry, is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, did the board receive a potential resolution in your packets? Did that happen?
Yes, it's in the packet.
Okay. So there's and you know, I'm not sure exactly what it says, but I want to talk about potential options moving forward. So there's a variety of different things you could do. One of which is you could take no action on anything tonight at all. Remember, the goal is to submit an application to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're aiming for May 6th. And that would give us a public hearing in July. And the petitioner of that would be Imagine Girdwood. And remember what happens, you know this from all the planning and zoning cases all the time, is that there's a petitioner, they submit an application, and then that initiates a public review process initiated by the planning department itself. So all the community councils and advisory and regulatory boards get noticed of that. So there's another public process that happens as part of the Planning and Zoning Commission process. I think that Imagine Girdwood is interested in continuing to move the process forward. However, I think they're interested in moving the process forward with the understanding that they still want to hear input from everybody. So your options are, I think, tonight as a body, you could do nothing and wait until, you know, the next 60 to 90 days for the public process, and that GBOS and the land use committee itself would submit something official as part of that process that then would be considered. So that's your choices. You could do nothing. The second option would be you could potentially pass a resolution that says, we're not ready to make any recommendations tonight, but we think that it's okay that the process continues to move forward, knowing that we get to submit comments as part of the Planning and Zoning Commission process. Or you could submit a pass resolution that you like the plan and you support it. But I don't think you're going to do that. But those are three options that I kind of thought through that are like, my feeling is that the middle one would be a good option. But also, if you don't even want to go that far to say, yeah, we think you should move forward to the planning and zoning process, you could just actually do nothing. Anyway, and maybe somebody else has other ideas too. I just thought I'd start the discussion with that.
Thank you very much, Holly. We have one hand up, Kyle.
So just to explain the process, if Imagine Girdwood submitted this plan to the planning department would send out a packet to us, which then we would distribute to land use and GBOS. And then at that time, land use could consider any resolution they want, or a motion of any resolution that they would recommend to GBOS to write. And then GBOS would take that action that comes from land use and then consider it and then vote upon it and then move forward. So So what Holly was describing there is probably that option 1 and 2. And so it gives you guys time to digest what's online and read the plan, and then come back and give input along the way there. So we just want to explain what's going to happen on our end as it comes in.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Kyle. Oh, go ahead, Holly.
Just that because what we would submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission would be exactly what you're seeing tonight.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, what's on the screen here is potential action for option 2. So this would be, if you scroll towards the end especially, this is basically saying, this would be saying GBOS LUC followed the process, think it's a fair process to support the submission of the application, but you're still going to provide feedback on the content at the future. So this kind of is the middle position of supporting the movement, of supporting the process going ahead, but reserving the right to comment on the contents as it moves through the MOA process. So from an application point of view, it's slightly better if we have a statement that it's in the right direction, which is what this would provide when we put the application in. But in either case, the community and GBOS and all the bodies have the opportunity to weigh in formally, both when it gets to planning and zoning and when it gets to the assembly.
Thank you for both of those, all of those clarifications. So for the agenda, we're on item number 3. And if anyone on each bodies would like to make comments, please do. Or you're welcome to make a motion and then second and discuss this resolution. Real loud. Anyone from land use or GBOS? Kevin?
Thanks, Brianna. So if this needs to be submitted by May 6th, I think that would be before our next LUC meeting. But Kyle, if I understand correctly, there's still time for, we could still go through our process of a motion at LUC that could then be put forth to GBOS. And then even if that's not part of the application on May 6th, I would assume it's part of the comments that the planning and zoning would review. Does that sound correct?
Correct. If you did,
I should say, if we don't act on it tonight and we wait until the next land use and GBOS meetings, there's not necessarily a penalty for that. Is that?
no, and you would even have to, at the next land use and GBOS meeting, there would not even be action have to be done. There'll be time to review. Once we receive the packet from the planning department, then at that point we'll be on a timeline that we have to submit comment by to meet the meeting that they are assigned to. So which would probably be like in 2 months. So that would give plenty of time for the community and the bodies to review the draft plan as it is and then submit comment.
I see. So certainly we have 1 month, potentially 2 months to put this through land use again. And
correct.
Apply for people to review it.
Brian?
I have a question. Mike, if I may ask a question of the chair there. Another 2 months of work on this plan. Do you have the budget in place to continue to engage Huddle in assisting moving the plan forward?
So just to clarify, what would be submitted is, unless there's an action tonight to reject it, what would be submitted, and then it still have to go through Magic Girdwood. But what would be submitted next week is basically the plan we're seeing now,
right,
the revised version. The question is, as it goes through the formal process, there'll be technical changes and other recommendations, and feedback from the community will be fed into that process and will be part of things will change. So there's still that opportunity going forwards.
Correct.
So it's not, what's there now isn't is the version which will be submitted, and not necessarily the version which we are ultimately passed.
Correct. Okay. And so Huddle is going to continue to be engaged through that. Yes. Thank you.
It won't be formal presentations here. It'll be formal presentations at planning and zoning and at the assembly.
Any other comments or questions from Any questions in the room or comments? Barbara and then Tim?
I'm just thinking that, it could be that this meeting could be new business, and then when you go to your next meetings in May, that it becomes old business. That gives you enough time to look at it. I think it's amazing how Holly took all those comments, 400 comments, and got this final version out in 3 weeks. But it still didn't leave you much time to look at the plan. But I feel like this resolution that is in the current packet is not a strong enough endorsement for this plan, and that it would be better to wait and pass something that's a strong endorsement next month rather than pass something now that's kind of wishy-washy that I feel like sends the wrong message. It doesn't say we really support this plan. It says we support the process. Yeah. I think that having that stamp from GBOS when it moves into Anchorage is really important. Thanks.
Tim? Oh, okay. Really quick to sort of respond is that what you just said, or what our community member just mentioned is still in support, because this process would have better feedback that we'd like it to move forward, and we still can write a much more supportive letter at the next meetings. That would be my response, but get another.
I was just going to say the same thing. The purpose of this would just be to say that the community is behind the idea, and then we'll comment on the content later on. So this wouldn't be instead of a later recommendation. This would be as something which is available at the application time, with then more formal action and support later. So there's still the opportunity to go through a full review and comment on the contents of the plan. This is just to say you're not going to get in the way of the application process, basically, or in support of the idea of it moving forwards.
Kyle.
So to clarify, the petitioner will be bringing an additional resolution later on once we receive the packet.
Yes.
Okay, so there'll be this resolution plus a resolution later, so.
But it's okay either way. This is just an option.
From the board, or any board or online, I was going to go to next, so go ahead. Board.
Well, I wasn't going to ask a question. I was going to see if I could move to support this.
We have a motion to support the resolution in the packet. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Guy. Okay, now we have discussion on the item. Jerry, go ahead. Or Carol?
I was just gonna second the motion. So I'm in support of having this resolution go forward and then writing a stronger recommendation later after it comes back from planning and zoning, which would not be at the next meeting. It would probably be in a couple months. But I'm in support of this.
Thank you. Kaylee?
Actually, Jerry said it for me. I'm with Jerry and Barb. I think we write a stronger letter. I support this now, and I say we write a stronger letter as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of smiles from here. Any other discussion from boards? We have anyone else online? Guy?
Yeah, I just, I think planning and zoning, when they get this, they're, the process is extremely important. And I think this has been through the correct process. So just adding, our assurance behind it is I think that's a good move. And then it'll give us time later to, if we want to start a stronger resolution, we got time for that.
Thank you, Guy. Anything else? I would just like to thank Huddle and Agnew Beck and all of the work for years on this comprehensive plan, and all of the community for the plethora of great caliber comments and questions and all of this involvement throughout the process. So thank you for coming tonight and thoroughly going through this as well, and the the resolution in front of us. So if there's nothing else, I'd ask for a roll call vote for each body separately.
So what I'll do first is we'll do land use. And so basically anybody who's a qualified voter online, I'm going to launch a poll, and you can either use the poll to put your vote in. And if you can't use the poll, just raise your hand and I'll call on you for your vote. So the poll will come up first. So I'm going to launch that now. Comes up. And so it's there for those online to vote. You can use the poll, raise your hand if you're unable to use the poll, or if there's two of you sharing a computer, raise the hand there. And then we'll start with the room. Those in favor of the resolution to submit the plan to the planning department for Planning and Zoning Commission, please raise your hand for a yes. Those not in support, please raise your hand for a no. Anybody abstaining in the room? Two in the room, okay. And I'm sorry, for those online, I'm sorry, you guys. Raise your hand if you have a yes. I'll call on you. Aaron, Amanda, Deb, Essex.
Yes.
Deb's a
Kaylee.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Crystal,
Yes.
Jerry or Carol?
Jerry and Carol, yes.
Okay. Shannon,
Yes.
Jonas,
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
Okay, please lower your hand if you had your hand up for a yes, or I didn't call your name, let me know. And if you don't support it, please let us know by raising your hand or submitting in the poll. I think Kirk and.
Hello, Kyle, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Carolyn. I've never called in on a phone before, but I would like to vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. And anybody else on the phone that I missed? It's *6 to unmute yourself if you're mute. And we'll show the results coming in online. We have all yeses and some abstains, but no nos. So, Lori,
Yes.
thank you. Got it. And yeah, I think that passes by LUC. So we'll go to GBOS next. Unless there's anybody we didn't count, let us know. Speak up if we didn't count your vote, if you want to be voted. Okay, go to GBOS. I'll start with Brianna Sullivan.
Yes.
Jennifer Wingard.
Yes.
Brian Burnett.
Yes.
First vote, welcome. Guy Wade.
Yes.
That passes 4-0. So it looks like we have passed both LUC and GBOS. We will tally the numbers and verify them. So.
Okay. Lots of voting practice, so that's good. I think we're finished with number 3 on the agenda, unless there's something we missed. If not, thank you again, Holly, and all the team for being here this evening. I will go to public comment. Persons offering public comment must state their full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and must be on subjects not listed on the agenda. Anyone here for also public comment tonight? Silence online. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Thank
Right.
you.
Good night, everybody online.
Goodbye, Huddle. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.